Hey, Pete, welcome to Making Disciples. You lead Pais in Manchester.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
tell us, what is Pais?
Pay started in Manchester in 1992. It's a biblical Greek word which means child servant. So when Pay first started, it was a simple vision to try and bridge the gap between schools and local church, reach young people in the community, connect them with local church, disciple them in local church. And it grew from there. So it's now a global organization, 14 nations. Me and my wife, Bryony, lead the work in the UK. So we're based in Burnley, in Lancashire, in the north. And we have 21 teams across the UK, as far south as Dorset, as far north as Cumbria, teams in Northern Ireland. And then, Pays operates globally, working with young people, students, churches. Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, the key thing that you guys are really known for is just the way you're trying to do discipleship.
Yeah.
And you talk a lot about rabbinical models of discipleship and trying to implement them into the lives of young people. I just cannot imagine how these teachings of Rabbi Jesus and the rabbis from 2,000 years old, 2,500, some of them, how you would apply them to kids in Manchester. I mean,
Yeah.
come
It's
on! I
great.
just cannot imagine Jerusalem in Manchester. So
Uh-huh.
how are you taking these old models of discipleship and applying them to modern day discipleship with your young people?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. So for us, the journey was really triggered maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Some of the books that we were reading, some of the conversations that were happening across church leaders in the UK and America around, how do we effectively reach young people, seeing young people leave the church in large numbers, how do we reach them? How do we disciple them? And as we were reading some of those books about different approaches to church or different missional strategies, Paul Gibbs, the founder of Pays and global leader of Pays, was also reading some ancient rabbinic material and begin to realize there might be some wisdom in these ancient pathways that can really help us in these postmodern times. And also at the same time, we're asking the question, what is the vision of Pays? What we're really trying to do here? Yes, we want to see people come to faith. Yes, we want to see people become part of the church. But Jesus said, go and make disciples. How do we, what does that look like? What does that really mean? How do we
Yeah.
make disciples? What is the vision of Pays? And what are some of these ancient pathways? So we discovered some things like Havarim, which is this word that means friends who study together, or Kavanah, which is about developing a more of an awareness of God's presence and God's purpose, or Talmudim, the Hebrew word for disciple. So we began to delve into, well, what did the rabbi discipleship relationship look like? What was our experience of discipleship? What do we see of discipleship in the church? What can we learn from this model, kind of this intensity? I would say I became a Christian because of my youth leader. So actually my youth leader, we didn't call him Rabbi Justin, but like there was this intensity, there was this bond. Everything was a learning opportunity. Going on a trip somewhere, driving the car, the music we listened to, the events he took us to, all the weird and wonderful Christian experiences he took us on, were all about trying to give us an experience of God's presence and an understanding of God's purpose. Either by design, either he meant that, or that's just what happened on the journey. That's what happened along the way. So my personal experience was that I came to faith, and my faith kind of was owned. I owned my own faith. I would say in large part because of my youth leader. So that was already in me. When I joined Pays, I really wanted to do for young people what Justin had done for me. And then over the years of being a part of Pays and now leading Pays, I've seen that's what we're really trying to harness.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
the bond between a rabbi and a disciple. That the rabbi, there's this ancient proverb about rabbis that your father brings you into the world, but your rabbi brings you into the world to come.
Yeah.
So the discipleship is serious. Like this is big stuff.
Yeah.
We're really trying to bring people into the world that Jesus is creating. And so, what that looks like in communities across the UK, including here in Burnley, Lancashire, is young people gathering together to study the Bible, but maybe not just in a church building, but in a coffee shop or in their school. So we have a few schools in our town that would have a Havarim Bible study happening in their school.
Do you call it that?
In some places, what we find is we use the words if it's helping us. So in some settings, the kids know it's Havarim, or they know they're using a drash, or whatever it might be, because that might be a bit of mysterious. There might be a bit of mystique, or this is different, this is mysterious. Or, I've been to a Bible study before, I know what that is, I don't like that. Or this isn't a Bible study, this is Havarim. Or this is a drash, or we're now doing a sood, or whatever. Now, in some places, if that's really off-putting, then we might use some other language. We have a PACE team in London, and I think they call their Havarim group the lounge. So trying to create that space. It's relational, because Havarim means friends who study together. So the friends bit is really important. Is it a safe space? Is it inclusive? Is it relational? All those kind of things. So that element of Havarim. So in the lounge, in that group, they're studying the Bible with these different perspectives. Different using the Havarim methods, but maybe not using the language. But again, in other places, it might be we are using that word because actually people, it's appealing to people. I
love it. So you talk about experiential discipleship. I'm going to use that phrase. What is it? And imagine a church leader's watching this or a youth worker's watching this. What's the key principle of this experiential discipleship that helps kind of move people forward, or young people forward?
Well, so we wanted to learn from the rabbis with the understanding that Jesus was a rabbi, and Jesus was a master rabbi. And in Jesus, what we can see, so let's say Jesus has a youth group of 12, these 12 young lads, mainly from this small group of villages, famous for fishing, famous for their passion, and it's in the north as well, by the way. So that's what Jesus got in his hand, these 12 young men. And his methodology for discipling them was by taking them on experiences. So very rarely do we see them at a gathered event where he's teaching. Most of his teaching seems to be in the middle of something, They've gone somewhere. Jesus has clearly designed the whole scenario. They've gone somewhere by design. He's chosen the location. He knows where they're going. He's almost anticipating an interruption on the way. There's a question that's asked. There's somebody just, throws himself in front of them or whatever. Something happens. And that's where the learning then begins to happen. So we can't quite recreate that in the same way. Like you said, we don't live in the Middle East. We don't live 2,000 years ago in the ancient world. And there's just certain things you can't do the same way in our culture, in our time. But I guess it's
partly because of child protection and risk assessment.
Child protection, yeah. So when Jesus takes his youth group to Caesarea Philippi in order to learn what it means to, the gates of hell.
To plant a church at the gates of hell, lap dancing club.
Child protection, safeguarding, all that good stuff. Health and safety just doesn't permit. But that primary idea, that principle of, the learning comes from the experience rather than we bring people to a place where they learn and hope they go and have an experience. Can we flip that round and say, let's start taking people on experiences? And what I know lots of church leaders and lots of youth leaders who are awesome, whose lives are full of great activities, whose lives are full of great adventures. But I know too many church leaders who don't take anyone with them, who their lives reflect the kingdom of God. They're desperate for their people to grow in their faith. But maybe it could just be that simple connect of who can I take with me? Next time I do my hospital visit, next time I go into the school to lead the assembly, are there some year sevens in this room that could plan this with me? Could I meet them before school or after school, find out their heart, their passion? What do they see God doing in their school? How can I then train them in some of these communication methods or how to plan a assembly or whatever it might be? Like the church leaders have these great skills, but maybe don't have a mechanism to pass them on. Or their lives are full of kingdom opportunities, but aren't taking people with them. So this, I'm not using this as a stick to beat church leaders with. It's more of an encouragement of, well, you've got the skills and actually you've got these opportunities.
You're doing it. You're not inviting others into it. Yeah,
you're not inviting others into it. Exactly. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. So again, like for the strapline or tagline of Pais is missionaries making missionaries. What we could do is we could try and say, okay, every weekend we'll gather young people in a church building to inspire them to do mission in their school, and we'll resource them, we'll train them, we'll tell them funny stories and inspiring stories to get them motivated. We'll give them a tool and say, on you go. Now we could do that, and we do an element of that, but I think a better method is saying, okay, we'll come with you. We'll come into your school, and I know not everyone can do this, but we'll come into your school with you, and we'll model what mission can look like in your school, and we'll invite you to join in. And so actually our mission is really discipleship, So most of our mission activities on Pais, they are about reaching people with the gospel, but actually the design of them is a discipleship. If a Pais team is just going into a school to do mission, that's good. But what's better is if they're taking young people with them. And of course, what's great is the young people are already there, So
let's just push that a little further, because earlier on we were talking, and you used the phrase, the intensity of the relationship. Is it, between the rabbi and the disciple was an intense relationship. I like to talk about kind of intentionality. It's a relationship that was intentional. So what you're describing there is about being intentional with someone to actually encourage them to run with it. I think many of us as church leaders would say that we've spent a lot of our time fighting to get into a position where we are able to lead ourselves. So the thought of now passing it on to somebody else, because we've only just been given the ball ourselves. It's like in a football match, you've just been passed the ball. I don't want to pass it on to anybody else. I've only just got it. But this is it almost needs to skip a generation. We need to model this so the next generations do it better than what has been done with us. So just talk through the intensity of a relationship. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, well, from what you just said there, one of my favourite phrases, and we use this phrase all the time, is our success is in our successors. So I love that idea. I love that idea that we all get to play. So I love the idea that the real win for the team isn't just if I score. It might be that I'm more like a coach now than I'm actually the star striker. But I get to know. I train them. I raised them up, and I gave them a platform, and we all get to play. For the intensity of the relationship. So within Pais the organisation, mentoring, flow mentoring, discipleship, the kind of that we're talking about is fundamental to the organisation, to the whole way the organisation flows. So the guy who leads Pais globally, the founder of Pais, we have a mentoring session once a month, and we've been doing that for about 15 years. Some of that, like in addition to that monthly hour together, and that hour together is very intentional and very intense, where it's not just a catch up. There's something specific he wants me to learn, and he'll create some kind of experience within that time together that generates learning. Outside of that, there might be a week of intense time together. We used to do we have done a conference called the Talmudim Academy before, where people spend a week together doing what Paul does. So the global leader of Pais, they'll spend a week living by his rhythm. They'll spend a week working on his projects. So he literally shares his life with them as an example of saying, this is what it could look like within the organization. Then I'll do the same for my guys. So I've got a staff team and then Pais team leaders that I'll have that same level of relationship with. And I live in the same country as them, so I can see them more regularly and have more conversations. Now we know we can't do exactly the same thing with a young person because they're not on a gap year, they're not in the organization. But what it might look like is a Pais apprentice then building a relationship with a young person in a school, and relationship is the foundation for all of this. And then spotting them as a person of peace. So we use that language. Part of our intentionality is, what does a person of peace look like? Who's leaning forward? You're in a school setting. This kid comes every week to the club. They come early, they stay late. They've never used a Christian word. They don't speak Christian, but they are open. They're leaning forward. So you've spotted a person of peace. We'd say to a Pais apprentice, stay with them, bond with them, pass on teaching to them. It might be in the school setting, It might be that you build some kind of mentoring relationship, discipleship relationship in the school setting. It might be that you begin to invite them into the church community, not just to get another number in, just bums on seats, but actually because you're trying to develop and build a relationship with them, which binds them or bonds them with the faith community. So.
Yeah. I love the way that you guys have been thinking about this, and I love the rabbinical stuff. My Twitter handle, Rabbi Rogers.
Yeah.
There's actually more to do with my nickname at school than anything else. But I love how you guys are taking what is rich historical practices and applying them to what is a modern context.
Yeah.
And I love the way that you aren't scared of using the title Tam Modine or Methetes. And I just love how you're using it to try and bring that mystery to something. I love that kind of intentional. Before I let you go, how do people find out more about some of the stuff that you guys are doing? If somebody wants to kind of check out more.
So the book Talmudine, the website is talmudineflow.com. So if you just want to look specifically at Talmudine stuff, talmudineflow.com. You can buy the book from Amazon. On that website, there's some free kind of instructional videos. And then there's also a template, which is how to disciple anyone in anything. And you can download that template for free from talmudineflow.com. Then if you want to look at the wider organization Pais, it's paismovement.com.
That's great. Pete Baker, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Been a real pleasure kind of chatting to you. And hopefully speak to you again soon. Cheers.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Chris.